Hey everyone, and welcome to my first video in this series. So what can you expect? Well, in this series, I'll be highlighting different points which I take issue with in Warhammer 40,000 8th edition. I will do my best to provide background information on the subject to ensure my points are understood, and that there is clear context to frame the issues I present. I should also mention, this series isn't intended to be a toxic dumping ground or a place to vent. The fact of it is, I love Warhammer 40k, every aspect of it. I only wish to illuminate some issues to stoke the conversation, and hopefully do my part, however big or small, to make 40k the best it can be. Now with that out of the way, let's get into it. So, what's the deal with Primaris Aggressors? Aggressors are an interesting unit. Since the release of Codex Space Marines, the Primaris line, for the most part, has seen each unit effectively execute specific battlefield roles. So while they may not be the best multitaskers, they are quite effective in their areas of expertise. And since in 8th edition that's usually what you want from your units, it makes them a great choice when you have a specific job in mind. And a quick glance over the Aggressors datasheet will tell you that their specialty is anti-infantry. And they have two unique abilities in particular that help them do their job. The first of which is Firestorm, which will allow a unit of Aggressors to shoot twice if they remain stationary during their turn, and Relentless Advance, which will allow them to ignore the hit penalty for advancing and firing assault weapons, which makes perfect sense because they can only wield assault weapons. And when it comes to defense, Aggressors sit at a solid toughness 5 thanks to their Gravis armor and have the standard 2 wounds of a Primaris Marine, making these guys far tougher to put down than your standard infantry. They definitely earn their spot as elites within the Codex, and all of that costs 21 points without war gear. So, all of this is sounding pretty good so far. But, as you would expect, there is an issue I have with Aggressors. And as is the purpose of the series, it's an issue I want to bring to light and create conversation around. And that issue is in their war gear. Alright, let's do some maths. A unit of 3 Aggressors comes in at 63 points, without war gear. Now Aggressors have 2 war gear options. Their stock gear is a pair of auto Boltstorm gauntlets, which cost 12 points, and a Fragstorm grenade launcher, which costs 4. Bringing the total cost of this option for all 3 Aggressors to be 48 points. Cool, right? Okay, so their other option is a pair of Flamestorm gauntlets, which come in at 18 points. For all 3 Aggressors, it totals at 54 points. Now, you might have noticed something. It appears there's a difference in their totals. Nothing huge, but definitely worthy of note. So you might be wondering, why are Flame Aggressors more expensive? Well, logic would dictate that since they have a slightly higher points cost, they are also slightly superior. Well, I'm here to tell you that they are not. In fact, they're worse. And I would even go so far as to say far worse. And I'm going to explain why. So let's compare them. When it comes to the stats, strength, AP, and damage, both weapon options are identical. So let's take a look at where they differ. Aggressors are all about unleashing hails of firepower upon your foes, so it makes sense to start off with volume of fire as the first area of comparison. Let's continue with our example of a 3-man Aggressor squad. With the Boltstorm setup, they generate 18 plus 3d6 shots when they shoot. Assuming average results, it ends up at 27 shots, which isn't too shabby for 3 dudes. With the Flamestorm setup, they generate a total of 6d6 shots. Again, assuming the dice are just as average, we end up with 18 shots. And here already, things are beginning to look bad for the Flamestorm Aggressors. And this is because the majority of the Boltstorm's fire is less at the whim of dice, so we end up with the averages being higher on the Boltstorm option, despite both choices having the same potential. Now, in fairness to the Flamestorm gauntlets, while they do have a lower average output, that output does auto-hit. So let's factor that in. Looking at our example Boltstorm squad, and factoring in the Aggressor's ballistic skill of 3+, the squad on average would miss 9 shots, leaving us with 18 successful hits, which in our example of using constant averages, brings both war gear options even when it comes to successful hits. Now technically, the argument could be made for the possibility to roll 6 sixes when determining the number of shots fired by the Flamestorms. And in that scenario, it would make it superior to the Boltstorm Aggressor's volume of fire. But that same possibility exists to roll 6 ones too. So this means that basically, you're paying more for the unreliability of the Flamestorms with the chance of it being better. I shouldn't need to say in a game of tactics and executing plans, paying more for unreliability is generally a bad idea. But there's one more area we can look at that might justify why the Flamestorm gauntlets are more expensive. And that area is range. Well, looking at my very fancy chart, you can see it's the Boltstorm's 18 inches to the Flamestorm's 8. And herein lies the main issue why the Flamestorm gauntlets are far and away the inferior option. You see, the real appeal of Aggressors is their ability Firestorm, the ability to shoot twice if they don't move. And with 10 inches less range, it's far harder to get that ability to activate. Furthermore, a decently mobile unit could kite the Flame Aggressors all day, meaning they would have a hard time shooting at all. Often the argument I hear in the Flame Aggressor's defense is that it's all about positioning and forcing your enemy to charge them. To me, this is extremely idealistic. Removing hypothetical scenarios where backfield objectives are absolutely vital, the Aggressors only have 5 inches of movement plus d6 when advancing, meaning as a non-deep strike unit, they're going to have to wait several turns before they can control an objective and force the enemy to charge them, and will most probably be slain before then. But hey, let's suppose you get real lucky, or the enemy can't manage to draw line of sight as your Aggressors relocate to control the objective. Flamestorm Aggressors are worse at holding objectives too, and it's because of their shorter range. Sure, Flamers auto-hit in Overwatch, and they still shoot twice, but that can be easily avoided, as it isn't hard to make a 9-inch charge. Several abilities and stratagems are in the game specifically to make charging easier. And let's look at their other ability, Relentless Advance, the ability that lets you not suffer the hit penalty for firing assault weapons after advancing. This ability is also rendered useless because Flamestorm gauntlets auto-hit anyways. So now your overcosted war gear choice is effectively turning off an ability you are paying for on the unit. You see, it pains me to spell it out, but arming your Aggressors with Flamestorm gauntlets make them perform statistically inferior when it comes to volume of fire, increases the difficulty of their job with inferior range, and offers less synergy when it comes to the abilities built into the Aggressor's toolkit. So why are we paying more for them? What gives? So this is the segment where I offer some solutions. Well, off the top of my head, one solution would be to take the approach seen on the Gene Stealer's datasheet, where they gain/lose an ability based on a war gear option. What I am talking about here is the Aggressor's Relentless Advance, because as I stated earlier, it is rendered useless with Flamestorm gauntlets, and could be replaced with something to actually justify the Flamestorm gauntlets being a more expensive option. Or a far simpler solution, GW, make Flamestorm gauntlets the cheaper war gear choice. They are worse. Oh right, real quick. I've also heard several people speak about how Salamander's Flamestorm Aggressors are quite good, and without getting into a discussion on synergies, war gear options should not be priced based on the abilities of a sub-faction in a shared codex. Also, I play Salamanders and I can confirm, sadly, that they are still worse than Boltstorm gauntlets. So that brings this video to a close, and it only took 177 takes. Jesus. But seriously, thanks for making it to the end. Did you like this video? To be honest, this is my first attempt at making content of this style, so feedback would be greatly appreciated. Feel free to mention things you agree with or things you don't. These are my opinions/findings after all, and I'd be happy to hear yours in return. Also, let me know if you have units you would like to get the what's the deal with treatment on. Oh, lastly, real quick, I want to say thanks to Reddit users The Freezer, 3352, and Amnesis Corp, and Falcon for allowing me to use the photos of their dope-looking Aggressors. I have links in the description of this video if you want to see more of their stuff. So, until next time, happy wargaming.